From the terror of hired killers trained by the cartels to the war on drugs in the remote jungles of Peru, this is a series about the new cartel wars and the legacy left behind by Pablo Escobar.
Let me just give you a little background on Pablo Escobar. People in Medellin loved him. They wanted to work for him. They wanted to be like him. He built churches, gave a lot of money to the poor. He had that Robin Hood, mystique. But if you look at the other side of Escobar, he's the inventor of narco-terrorism. I remember the police always telling me, he says, Javier, we're not in this to get dope. We're not in this to seize money. We're in here to kill Pablo Escobar. Why? It's a revenge. It's personal.
I first heard of Pablo Escobar when I was working as an agent in Miami. The group that I was assigned to, the enforcement group, we were known as the Caribbean group, and we did a lot of importation cases, which was your larger cases. It was multi-hundred kilograms of cocaine coming in, and the Medellin cartel were the big guys on the block at that time. And who was the head? Well, you had Rodriguez Gotcha, but you started hearing about Pablo Escobar over and over. They had their smuggling routes established. They could use aircraft, they could use fishing boats.
Back in the 80s, a kilo in Colombia was about 1,000 to produce, 4,000 to transport it to Miami. So your initial investment was $5,000, right? In Miami in the mid-'80s, it was going from anywhere to $50,000 to $70,000. In New York, anywhere from $80,000 to $90,000. And in Europe, over $100,000, right? That's a hell of a lot of cash.
Some experts say cocaine, not coffee, is Colombia's biggest export earner, contributing as much as 25% of the country's overseas earnings.
Escobar used to have lavish parties at his ranch, had a bullfighting ring, at a zoo, lavish cars. They bought paintings, the Botero, Matisse, for millions of dollars. They didn't know what the quality of the painting was. They just knew it was an expensive painting, just to show other traffickers that they were bigger.
He recognized the value of enforcing his will on others through violence. Let's say you were a police officer or a politician. He would have his attorneys or whoever, one of his representatives, come into you, and he would sit down with you, and they'd pop the briefcase open, and they'd say, do you recognize the people in this photograph? And it would be your wife and children coming out of your front door of your house. Well, do you recognize this school? And it'd be your children coming out of the school. Or do you recognize the people in this car pulling out of this driveway, and it's your mom and dad, and they're leaving their home? It sends a message, and you say, what do you want? And they said, a simple phone call will earn you $20,000 or $50,000 or whatever it is to alert us to an operation or anything that we need to know to keep us from being busted. Or you could say goodbye to your family.
There's a conversation that we intercepted that he's talking to his wife. And he's telling her how much he misses her, loves her, this while he's on the run. And in the background, you hear a guy yell, and you can tell they're torturing someone. And he tries to cover the phone. He says, cover his mouth, and just keeps on telling his wife how much he loves her.
When Colombian police raided the area, they discovered 6,500 kilograms of processed cocaine, worth well over $1 billion. None of the top men were caught in the raid. They had left just in time.
We would get very, very close. There were times when we'd go on operations and the coffee would still be hot in the location that we had hit. We would get that close. But, Escobar had his informants out. If he was in a location where there was a lot of cleared land, he'd see us coming. If we flew in on helicopters, he would hear us coming.
There was nobody who gave information. You're snitching, they drop you from an airplane, they kill you in front of people so that other traffickers, other, would-be informants would know that this guy hated, informants. His war, and it was an all-out war, was based on one word: extradition. He did not want to get extradited to the United States. And when he killed the presidential candidate, Luis Carlos Galan, Galan was platforming for extradition. The assassinations, the bounties on police officers. He downed an airplane, Avianca Airline. He put a bomb at the DAS building in Colombia, which is like their equivalent of FBI, killing hundreds of people. There's no real number that you can put on how many people he killed. I would say it's in the thousands. When he surrendered, I'll never forget, it was upsetting for us because of all the work we had done. Basically, that's why Escobar surrenders. I mean, we're getting close to capturing him. The deal was, I'm gonna be in my own house. Nobody can come in and visit me. I'm gonna hire my own prison guards. He had chalets built on the side of the prison. He had a soccer field. He had the National Colombia soccer team come in on weekends, on Sundays, and play with him. And we knew nothing was gonna happen. He was gonna continue his drug trafficking activities. He still was gonna kill people, and now he's protected. So what better way, if you're a trafficker, I'm having my own people with me. I can have my own parties, and parties they were having. I mean, he loved, I'd say, loved orgies. Not that that's a bad thing, right? But he loved, they bring in, the prostitutes, women. I mean, it wasn't a prison. It was a country club.
Colombianos, mientras sea presidente de la República.
So the president made the decision of transferring him to a regular jail cell in Bogota. So he sends the Colombian military, a colonel, and he sends the assistant minister of justice, a guy by the name of Eduardo Mendoza. When both of them get to the prison site, assistant minister of justice tells the military colonel, right? You're the colonel, you're the military guy, go tell Escobar you're moving him to Bogota. The colonel tells the minister of justice, the president didn't give me the orders, he gave them to you. And this guy's a small guy, no gun. So the minister of justice goes in and tells him, and Pablo Escobar loses it again, goes into a fit. His sicarios are telling him to kill the assistant minister of justice. Pablo is telling him, get the president on the phone. The president is not answering the phone in Bogota. So his prison guards, the guys who he had hired, get in a shootout with the military. And obviously, people get killed. And Escobar and his sicarios walk out the front door. And the second search is on.
When Escobar escaped from his custom-built prison, initially there were a lot of opportunities that were missed. For example, telephone technology wasn't like it is today with cell phones. This was back in the days of radio phones. So we could triangulate on his signal, but by the time we got troops out there, we could never find the guy, He had a taxi cab in his garage. So Medellin's a big city like New York. Thousands of taxi cabs. Well, if he's talking on this radio phone and we triangulate on a position, by the time we get there, he could be 5 miles down the road. And he's blending in with traffic because it's just another taxi cab,
We instructed our officers to go after everybody who worked for Escobar. We're going to dismantle his people. Cell heads, distributors, money launderers in Miami, go after the sicarios.
It was getting to the point where he didn't have the resources that he'd always had before to call on when he needed things. He didn't have immediate access to cash. He didn't have immediate access to bodyguards.
We're intercepting calls, messages. He had the empire. He just couldn't get it.
As that manhunt continued on, there was a group called Los Pepis that was formed. Pepe stands for People Persecuted by Pablo Escobar. What Los Pepis did is they employed the same terrorist activities that Escobar employed against the government.
They were trying to kill, his kids, his wife, his mother. So Escobar was very, very worried. He really couldn't organize that terroristic war because his main concern was, I need to get my family to a safe place.
I think the Colombian populace was so tired of the indiscriminate bombings and innocent people being killed, we started getting tips that were more valuable.
The citizens, the public, started informing on Pablo Escobar.
With Pablo Escobar and the Medellin cartel, it's the first time that a major international cocaine organization was completely decimated and completely dismantled.
Today, Pablo Escobar was shot dead while fleeing across a rooftop. A callous killer, a generous benefactor, and the instigator of unremitting violence.
We never fooled ourselves by thinking that, okay, if we take out the Medellin cartel, cocaine's going to stop. There's just too much money to be made, too much easy money to be made in the drug business for people to walk away from it. You look at the situation in Mexico nowadays, what's going on there is every bit as violent as it was in Colombia back in the times when we were down there. The corruption is, in my opinion, worse in Mexico than it was in Colombia back in the day. It's evolved now into modern day with transnational organized crime. You know, it's all criminal organizations are becoming what we call polycrime. They're not focused on one specific crime. They'll involve themselves in any crime that makes them money. So if you're, and you think about it, if you're interested in committing terrorist activities like the Taliban, they'll involve themselves in drug trafficking so they can make the money to buy the weapons, to pay off whoever they need to pay off and continue their insurgent activities. So Colombia is not the leading country of cocaine production anymore. I think they're number 3. I think Bolivia and Peru are number 1 and number 2 now. Are we ever gonna beat narcotics? Probably not. I mean, again, it comes back to greed and ego. There's just way too much money.